Wonderful. All right, welcome to this webinar where we'll be introducing a really exciting data engineer apprenticeship. And before we get going, I'll just introduce myself as the presenter. So my name is Raoul Gabriel Irma. I'm the founder and CEO of Cambridge Spark. I have two jobs, actually. One is running Cambridge Spark, but I'm also an affiliated lecturer at Cambridge University in the computer science department, where I teach the undergrads about software development and object-oriented programming. So if those are topics of interest, more than happy to talk to you about them. I also did a PhD there, and I've written several books on Java and software development. So I left my email here. I'm always really happy to connect. If you want to geek it out about some technical topics, it's always a pleasure. Now, today we'll be talking about data engineering, and I thought it'd be quite useful to first talk about why should we care, right? What's data engineering? Why should we care? So, let's just imagine for a moment that, you want to go to Brighton. I hear that Brighton has amazing fish and chips. So you're going to get your car, maybe an electrical car, right? And you want to get to Brighton. If the road looks a little bit like that, if the runway, has bumps, if there's traffic, you're not going to have a great time. And, if you also want to make sure you've got a good map, right? You don't want to end up in Bournemouth by accident, right? You just want to make it to Brighton. So this is a bit, the problem we have in the data world, right, is we want to be achieving some business objectives that are powered with data, right? We want to achieve some P&L improvements, for example, by analyzing customer data. But if it takes a long time to get access to the customer data, or if the customer data has a ton of holes, there's missing information, it's not in the right format, and even worse, you thought you could get access to the customer data, but you find out actually there's multiple places in your system that altogether represent your customer data, you're just not going to have a good time as a data analyst or a data scientist. It's basically the equivalent of having this sort of broken runway. You're never going to make it to Brighton. You're never going to make it to your business objective. So what you want instead, right? You want this, right? I don't know if there's any fan of Formula Ones here, but you want this equivalent of the smooth Silverstone Grand Prix. The asphalt is really nice, really shiny. You can go really fast where you want to go. And you want a really fast car as well, right? So the organization itself, needs to be embracing data, but really you need your infrastructure, your setup to be really smooth and available. And that's really data engineering. It's how can we create this environment where we have a really smooth track and everyone driving on that track is having a fantastic time, a lot of fun. They can go to A to B fast and they can achieve their objectives. So that's why we should care about data engineering. It's really fueling ultimately your business objectives, enabling you to achieve what you want using data. And why should you care? Well, let's think about a world where you have really poor data engineering. What's the cost of that? The cost is huge, and there's a lot of studies that shows the implication of it. So, for example, Gartner, looked at a survey of established organization, and poor data quality can cost on average 20 to 12 million pounds. And it kind of makes sense, right? Poor data leads to poor productivity, leads to slow down, leads to also incorrect decision making, which can affect your P&L. So it all really adds up. So poor data quality means poor business performance. It turns out data professionals, data analysts, data scientists, business analysts, and so on, 40% of the time, on average, is spent on doing mundane data quality work. This is time that instead could be spent on real business problem, right? So figure out how we do that customer analytics in the first place. And there's many hours that are generally spent on resolving access to data and ensuring you've got the right data in the right place, in the right format. So those are all problems that affect the business performance, and these are all problems that can be addressed if you have the right investment in high quality data engineering, which is what I'd like to focus on. And before we introduce a program around how you can get the right skill set internally, so we're spending a bit of time. What's the bigger picture? Where does data engineering fit in? So if we go back to that customer example, maybe you've got an event generated, which is a transaction that a customer is making, in your online store, for example. This data that is generated, which raises the question of where is that data going to be? What are we going to do with it? And who's going to be using this data ultimately, right? So if you look at this diagram, I'll talk about this box in the middle around the data engineering life cycle, but let's talk about those interesting yellow boxes first, and then kind of like reverse the flow a little bit. So clearly, your business will have an analytics teams that they want to work on the customer data and kind of like find out all the insights. What are your top performing customers? Which ones are the ones that are buying from you anymore? So some sort of churn analytics. So your analytics team, what they need is data assets that are ready, so they can work with it. Organizations that are more invested than others in the data maturity cycle might also have a team focusing on pure data science and machine learning tasks. So, for example, doing predictions, forecast. What's going to be your revenue growth? What's going to be your churn? Those are all things that you can predict by using some data modeling. So you may well have an established machine learning team in house that also needs to have access to high quality data. They need to know where to find it. They need to understand what are the features available and what they could do with it. So again, there's a dependency here on this sort of upstream team that produces those data assets. And finally, you also reverse ETL, which I know sounds quite fancy, but this is the idea that in some cases you've got structured data which you need to pump back into external system. So maybe you have data that you've processed that you want to upload onto your CRM, and there might be a special representation that you need to send that data to, maybe through an API, or maybe your accounting software, you've got information about your customer you've extracted, and you want to upload that into yet another system that has a different data representation. So this is potentially another team that is responsible to do this integration work with every other systems you've got. But again, they need to access data that's been already ingested, cleaned up, transformed, and then they kind of have to unravel that back and get into another system. So all those yellow boxes here are typically teams that are well-defined, and those teams are only going to be really productive, and you can extract the best performance out of them if they've got access to high quality, highly accessible, structured data. And this is introduce ourselves now to the upstream team, which, really looking at, well, we know we've got data coming in, but how is it going to be ingested? What do we need to do with it? Where is it going to be stored? What are non-functional requirements around the data access and availability? And how do we need to serve all those teams, which ultimately are going to be your clients, right? So if you think about the data engineering team here, the clients are the analytics team, the machine learning team, the reverse ETL team, essentially. What are going to be their requirements, and how can we make sure that they've got access to this right data? So that's the data engineering lifecycle. It's thinking about what's the requirements coming from those teams. So you need to be able to work with stakeholders. You need to understand what data they'll be looking for, what's the right format, what are non-functional requirements, for example, read versus write access. Is it around low latency, or is high throughput analytics potentially the interest? So all of that will kind of guide not only the storage mechanism, but also what's the right serving mechanism. So, for example, do we need to define some APIs that's going to help you retrieve this data, or Do we need to set up some infrastructure that allows the analytics team to run queries on top of a data warehouse? And those are kind of questions that comes in place, which will influence the right implementation. So what you need here really is, individuals that are really good at defining business requirements. So that comes with a skill set, have a good understanding of the right technical landscape, and can also implement those requirements, using technologies or programming languages like Python and SQL to make those data assets available through a serving mechanism. So that comes with a range of skill set, which we'll go through in a moment, but you also need to be thinking about cross-cutting concerns around security of the data, the governance around it, the operation of the data, potentially working with some orchestration technologies, Kubernetes, Docker, and so on, depending on your scale, depending on your existing cloud infrastructure. And really importantly, software engineering. You need to be able to trust that the data that is made available and processed for downstream teams to use, that business logic is correct, right? You don't want it to produce incorrect data because, again, that's going to lead to incorrect decision making, which, if you kind of go down the rabbit hole, that leads to poor P&L ultimately. So you want to make sure that the code, the business logic that's written is verified. So that comes with another skill set. So I can't stress this enough. Without good data, your business cannot perform really well. So really investing in strong data engineering foundation, strong data engineering talent leads to a ton of productivity benefits, but ultimately to realizing your business objectives, especially as every organization today is highly invested in better utilizing data. Again, if you don't have the right infra, the right data access, it's just not going to happen. Now, what we're finding at Cambridge Spark is that it's really hard to hire a data engineering talent, but it's also really hard to retain a data engineering talent because this skill set is, really hard to find. And there's many opportunities available for individuals that can do data engineering. So that leads to problem around what's your talent strategy around retention and hiring for data engineers. So we have created a data engineering apprenticeship, which enables you to tap into your existing levy. So what that means is that the program is funded through your government apprenticeship levy. So that's fantastic news. It's available already. If you're not utilizing it, you're missing out. And that's a big shame. It's a missed opportunity. But what this apprenticeship will do is to help your workforce upskill in those really important knowledge, skills, and behavior to create that data engineering mindset internally. So this program is really suitable for individuals that, already comfortable working with data. They're not a data engineer already. If you're already a data engineer, this is not the program for you, because the whole point here is you want to create a workforce that has data engineering capability. And we find that it's important that you're already familiar working with the data space, you have a problem-solving mindset, but you don't necessarily need to be able to program in Python, as an example, but you need that mindset. And what we've done is to create, a comprehensive curriculum that builds up your knowledge to really tackle all those parts as part of the data engineering lifecycle. So you'll be learning Python as the lingua franca to operate and do the data transformation, do the data serving. This is kind of like a general language that you just need to build capability with, because it's really highly repurposable. But really importantly, because as a data engineer, you'll be interfacing with the data analytics team, the machine learning team, and so on. They'll be using Python already. So that allows you to create that community, and that allows you to really understand your customer. So curriculum invests highly into Python. And then we dive into giving the right skill set around agile methodology, requirements gathering, working with stakeholders to really define those technical requirements into an implementation path. And what that means is then, you'll be exposed to data engineering concepts. What are the range of data solutions out there? data warehousing solutions, streaming solutions. How can you do effective data modeling? So once the requirement is defined and you've got the right serving and storage mechanism, how can we structure the data to make it as easy as possible for the users to get the right access with the right requirements? So there's a range of approaches available in data modeling, whether it's relational or whether it's NoSQL based. So the goal here is to really build a comprehensive overview. And then working with a SQL, you cannot escape SQL. And when you work with data, you really need to be able to build a skill set around optimizing your SQL queries, be able to aggregate multiple tables and so on. So highly investing in that space. And then where things I think gets really interesting is that as a data engineering, maybe that's the big contrast to a data analyst, is that you'll be writing code that will be reused over and over again. The data pipeline that you'll be creating, this is a pipeline that many users will be consuming from, which often is quite different from a data analyst. The scientist where you write sort of ad hoc code to meet a query, and you might not need to maintain that query. In the data engineering space, the code that you write needs to be reusable, maintainable, and highly accurate. And so that's why learning about software testing and a range of approaches from unit testing, regression, system testing, property-based testing, those are all kind of concepts that you will need to pick up to ensure that the code you write is functionally correct and you can prove it. You will need to acquire some solid DevOps foundations, so working with tools that allows you to collaborate with multiple teams together, maintaining the same code base. So tools like using Git, getting proficiency in Git to do version control, branching, merging, working with different individuals, integrating with your continuous integration system and so on. So lots of new knowledge and skills required here. Working those cross-cutting concerns around data governance, which is general knowledge that any data professional needs to be having. And then we're providing you with different electives depending on the need of your team and your personal goals, whether it's around potentially doing data visualization, for example, looking at log data. And I think the beauty, once you're so close to the data that is being ingested, all the data has timestamps. So potentially visualizing the trends and pattern or doing some simple time series analysis, it's something that really will equip you as a data engineer to kind of like spot if there are data quality issues that potentially needs to be solved early on in the ingestion journey of that data. We offer you an electives around big data systems and cloud computing. So that would mean, using Spark as a distributed engine to run queries on a larger scale. Not every organization uses Spark yet, but it's very much a technology that is highly adopted. So gaining proficiency in Spark is only going to be useful for your career. But, especially enterprise organization we work with at Cambridge Spark are, heavily committed to Spark and Databricks as an infrastructure to, run queries on a larger scale. So that kind of gives you an overview of the curriculum. So by the end of it, you kind of like have a nice springboard into your data engineering career, which enable you later on to specialize in different tech stack if that's something that you need to do, right? Different organization, again, might specialize into Kafka for streaming. They might, be committed to doing a data pipelining, orchestration using a tool like Airflow. Those are things that will be available to you after the apprenticeship as you kind of like develop your skill set. So you might be curious how apprenticeship works and so on. So the good news is your employer is committed to the levy. So they're spending already money, which is available for you to train. So there's an immediate opportunity available. The requirement is that you spend minimum 6 hours a week to gain your knowledge, skills, and behavior. And, this might be more or less, depending on the week, we recommend 6 to 8 hours. That is, ring fence for the purpose of enhancing your professional development. The rest of that time is really when you're working on those projects and delivering ROI back at work and in your team. So the way that you learn is through attending the workshops that we deliver, the assignments that you need to do, the reflection activities, and so on. This is really your time to kind of like make you, supercharge you as an individual to ensure that you've got the right skills to be successful. So with that time, at Cambridge Spark, we've kind of like divided the process into 4 steps where you get to attend half-day live workshops that are guided through by the teacher and the tutor. So those are opportunities like today to really engage with your classroom, the expert staff. If you miss sessions, they're recorded, so you get time to catch up, but it's a great time to acquire knowledge. Now we give you access to our own learning platform, Educate AI, which is a proprietary system we've developed for the last 6 years, which gives you instant feedback on code that you'll be writing, whether it's in Python, SQL, Spark. Get access to a range of sandbox projects. And this is really your experimentation time. And I can't stress this enough, especially in a technical field, you need to learn by doing, not by listening or by writing essays. There's no fun writing essays. You need to be doing. So we provide you with this platform that supports Git, Python, and so on to really enhance and accelerate your skills. You get access to a mentor that's going to help you brainstorm and ensure that you translate that skill set at work on work-based project, deliver the ROI. And you're part of honestly, a really amazing community of data professionals at Cambridge Spark with a range of employers, kind of like stimulate your thinking, get peer learning, get access to community with speakers and talks that we organize. You have access to a professional coach, highly qualified to look after your well-being, your motivation, your progression, make sure that you're on track on the program, facilitate those discussions potentially with your line manager, review your progress and your objectives. And if you're curious about Educate AI, check the URL. It's literally educate.ai project that's been sponsored by the UK Innovation Agency. The whole goal here is to give you an opportunity to start learning, start practicing, and get feedback on real technical code that you'll be writing. And it's highly gamified, so you work on projects with a score, which kind of like incentivize you to how can I get the best score? And there's a peer learning community available when you can ask questions as well, and figure out the best practices along the way. So hopefully you've enjoyed this short webinar. We have our next apprenticeship intake starting end of November. The application deadline is in 3 weeks' time, I believe, 25th October, actually, 2 weeks. So if you're interested in this opportunity, potentially for yourself, for your team or the organization, I would say that you have a real opportunity. I've left my email. Feel free to get in touch. Now, you also have my LinkedIn details here. If some of you are curious, which apprenticeship standard we're using here. So we're leveraging the data analyst level 4 apprenticeship standard, and we've specialized the curriculum to ensure that all the knowledge, skills, and behavior are met as part of the data analyst standard. However, as a data engineer, even though, for example, both a data engineer and an analyst, they need to work with structured data, the range of technologies and tools and approaches are going to be quite different. So we're leveraging the data analyst standard, but specializing it for data engineering. So this is how we're able to offer a highly specialized data engineering apprenticeship. If you missed the November cohort, the next one is in February, just so you know. Fantastic. So it's been a real pleasure delivering this webinar. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take some questions if there are any questions. And I believe we had a question around the standard, and this is defined on the Institute of Apprenticeship website, which kind of defines all the technical standards available in the space. Brilliant. Yeah, if you got any questions, pop them in the chat box, raise your hand, I can pick them up. Otherwise, you can get in touch with me directly. I'm always really excited about anything in the data space and always really keen to engage.
Can you see the chat, Raoul? We've got one question come through from Matt Stutley. Oh, actually, Matt, yeah, if you want to.
I can ask it directly. I didn't realize as I was unmuted. Thanks for that, Raoul. That was really, really interesting. Thank you. I'm just trying to understand from the point of view of taking an apprentice on board. How does that work? I mean, Gallagher, we've got lots of schemes and lots of ways of doing apprenticeships, but they tend to be in our business section in the insurance world and not so much in the tech world. If we wanted to go forward, say with the Feb cohort, how does that work? Where do the candidates come from? How do we bring them on board? How would we work with you? And maybe just a bit more detail on the employer side. That would really help before I go back to my HR people and talk about this some more.
Absolutely, and I'll give you the short answer, but there's a longer answer. So
yeah, I'm sure we follow up. If I can just, all I need to do is I can explain a bit more, then we can perhaps have a proper follow-up session. Absolutely. With a more detailed dive.
There are the two categories of apprenticeships. So one is professional apprenticeships. So this is looking at your existing employees. They can be upskilled or reskilled using the apprenticeship levy. So, for example, a business analyst that wants to reskill to be a data analyst or data engineer, or someone in an IT support function that, they'd like to further progress the career, and, data engineering is in high demand. We can help reskill existing staff through an apprenticeship program. So that's kind of like one approach. The other approach is you want to hire new talent in the organization. So you need a headcount to be a new headcount to be established. And as an organization, Cambridge Spark, we work with a range of networks and communities, so we can help you identify the right talent, assess it, and make sure they enroll on the right program for you, and they'll be joining the right team. So we can support you with sourcing, assessment, and onboarding of that new apprenticeship candidate. So one is kind of more about hiring and new talent. The other one is around learning and development and internal progression. Apprenticeships can be used for both.
Awesome, that's really helpful. Thank you very much. Thanks for the talk. I've got to drop off now as well, but that was really, really helpful. I'll got your email. I'll drop you a line in the next couple of weeks.
Great,
thanks
thank
very
you,
much.
Matt. Okay. Brilliant. Any more question, Abby? I can't see the chat, unfortunately, so I need your help for that.
Yeah, of course. We did have one from Bharat, who was just asking about the eligibility criteria for individuals. I have directed to the website and asked them to drop a message to one of our team to go into further detail on them. But if you want to cover the basics, then yeah, please do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a range of criteria on eligibility for apprenticeship program. I think the best is that we send you the information. But one is it's for employees and new hire based in England only. There is recognition of prior learning. So, if you're already a data engineer, if you've got a computer science degree and so on, you're not eligible for funding because those are knowledge and skills you already know. We have other programs that are even more, advanced and technical if you're interested there. Then there's also not just eligibility, there's suitability, right? So motivated individuals, support from the line manager, ring fencing, that's 6 to 8 hours of time for new knowledge and skills and behavior. So it's quite a lot of details, but that's kind of like broadly the general theme. So I'll make sure that we follow up by email with all the criteria. I think that'll be the best way to do it.
We've got one more question from Laura Neal. This has been really helpful. Will the recording be shared? I'd like to share of our data leads that couldn't make today. Yes, in answer. This has been recorded and we'll send it across after the webinar. I think that's it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Look forward to hearing from you, and I wish you a fantastic lunch. I'm sure everyone's a little hungry right now. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.